What's going on? My name's Matt Parker, and today it's my absolute pleasure to be showing you one of my own personal basses, my 1964 Gibson EB2. But before we get on with the video, please remember to like and subscribe, as it really helps me grow this YouTube channel. It means I can keep showing you cool basses. Right, let's get back to today's video. Launched in 1958, the Gibson EB2 was Gibson's second bass release and mimicked the construction methods of the popular ES335 guitar. As such, it features a ton of comparable specs with the ES335. Mainly, there's a semi-solid construction, so it has a solid maple center block, and then it has a laminate top, sides, and back made of maple ply, and then the neck is a set mahogany neck. Taking a look at the body, you can see it's really nice F-holes. The body itself is double bound, which is just such a classy touch from Gibson. During this era, if you looked at a comparable Fender, for example, it was very kind of like modular, very nuts and bolts, and it didn't have a lot of the features of the Gibsons of the era, but obviously all of these features came at a premium when buying the Gibsons. Now this bass has two pickups, but this has been modded to a later spec EB2D, which means that they've introduced the bridge pickup. Now originally my bass would have just had the single neck pickup. An EB2D usually has this bridge mini humbucker, but it's actually placed around here. So whoever's done this modification has moved this forward slightly. But it's a really usable mod. It definitely opens up the tonal palette of the instrument a little bit, and yeah, super useful. We'll get into that a bit later on. During the 60s, this neck pickup on its own was a bit infamous for blowing up bass cabs. Speaker technology at the time wasn't really up to the really hot output from this pickup, and it's really low end focus. So speakers just couldn't really handle the signal that was getting thrown at it at the time, and it was quite common for these to blow up cabs. Due to this, the EB2 got a reputation for being quite woolly, being a bit too bottom end focused. Obviously, a lot of people call this a mud bucker and things like that. With modern amplification, it's really usable. Although I would say that you sometimes have to do a bit of gain reduction compared to your usual signal because it's such a powerful neck pickup. So taking a look at the controls, we've got a three-way select switch, so neck, both pickups, and then bridge, and then we've got a volume, tone. Now, originally, the EB2 would have come with what they call the baritone switch. Now, this was essentially a low-cut filter, very similar to how a bass 6, for example, would have worked, because during the early 60s, a lot of people were looking for that kind of like tic-tac bass sound, which was quite scoopy. A lot of the bottom end was taken out of it. Whoever modified this one didn't include the baritone switch when they've been doing the rewiring. So that, I believe, would have been here. And I think this control might have been somewhere around here, actually. But, you know, again, it's not a factory EB2D. Someone has retro modded it. Taking a look at the bridge, we can see we've got a very basic bridge design. It's a simple stop tailpiece, as we'd expect from Gibsons of this era. And then it's a simple height adjustment for the whole unit, either side. And you can actually adjust the intonation by moving these screws at the side slightly. So you can kind of like move the bridge on its axis, but it's very basic. Some people think this is quite a hard bridge to intonate. I've never had that problem. This bass actually intonates really well. I think it's kind of a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It obviously doesn't have as much adjustability as a modern bridge, but for what this instrument is and what it's trying to do, it actually works really well. So taking a look at the headstock, we can see it's got black headstock facing with a mother of pearl inlay. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that this one has had a headstock repair. Now, this is a really common issue with Gibson. Because the neck is one piece and they actually angle the headstock from a wood cutout rather than doing a scarf joint or anything like that, they're really prone to damage if it takes a bang or knock, falls off a stand, for example, and they often will all kind of snap in a really similar place. This one has suffered that same fate, I'm afraid. It has been repaired really well. It's been doweled, so it's actually stronger than from factory, but something to be mindful of, something to take into consideration if you're looking at getting a Gibson EB2. Now you can see the headstock design is a 2+2 headstock design. Originally in 1958, when the bass was released, it would have had banjo-style top-mounted tuners, but by 61, these were replaced with the elephant ear kind of short shaft 2+2 machine heads. Now, because of the difference in shaft size, we actually ended up with these kind of like wings being added to the headstock face. So the headstock itself is actually made of 3 pieces because it has 2 additional little cutouts added here to compensate for the difference in machine head size. And while we're on the headstock, it's got a truss rod adjustment at the nut, as per most Gibsons. Nut width on this particular bass is 44mm. It's quite a wide nut width, and it's coupled to quite a fat, chunky D profile. The neck feels great. I really like a more rounded neck anyway, so having a bit more depth on this is super nice for me. And then moving down the fretboard, we're still in Gibson's kind of like golden era at this point. So we've got a Brazilian rosewood fingerboard with 20 vintage frets. Now, while we're still on the neck, the fingerboard radius is 12 inch, so it's actually a lot flatter than, for example, Fenders of the era. Fenders from the 50s and 60s would still be sporting a 7.25 inch radius, whereas, as mentioned, the Gibson is a 12 inch, so it feels a lot flatter, and actually combined with that fat neck profile, it's a really comfortable playing experience. I think if they'd gone with a smaller radius, it might have felt a bit too kind of like baseball batty. But because they've got a bit more girth to the neck, but then they've added a flatter radius, it actually makes it really manageable. Again, this is one of my kind of like favorite neck profiles. It's definitely not as fast as a modern neck, but it makes you feel a bit more deliberate with your nose choice perhaps. And you can still do really fast runs. It's not, in any way cumbersome. It just feels slightly different and gives you a different playing experience. So flipping the headstock over, you can see where it's had the repairs and these machine heads as mentioned. And then we can see that the bass itself has a mahogany neck. And in this instance, it's a set neck. A lot of traditional Gibsons will be a set neck or a through neck. It definitely gives you a different kind of playing attack to a bolt-on. I tend to find bolt-ons are a bit snappier, but some people say set necks sustain more. My experience with this bass is that it sustains far longer than you would expect. Being a 30.5 inch scale length with flats and being a hollow body, you might not expect it to sustain as long as it does, but actually you can get this really kind of almost like musical feedback where you can sustain a note for almost as long as you want. And it really took me by surprise the first time I played it at loud stage volume. So there we go, quick overview of the EB2. Let's get down to some tones. So there we have it, my 1964 Gibson EB2. Now, I've only actually owned this bass for about 2 months, but I had played it a year ago at the Birmingham Guitar Show, and I almost bought it then because I really, really liked it, but I opted to go for my 1972 Fender Jazz instead because I thought it might be a little bit more versatile. But as a lot of these things go, I had the opportunity to play it again at the London International Guitar Show. It's one of the things where I gravitated straight away to it again, and I was just like, oh, I love this thing. I actually inadvertently sold a bass at the show, which I wasn't intending to sell, and that gave me the funds I needed to be able to buy this, and I took it home with me, and I couldn't be more happy. It's absolutely phenomenal. I've only actually gigged it twice so far, but I played it a lot at home. I think because of the headstock break, it's one of those basses where I have to be a little bit more considerate about the stages I take it on. So I've only taken it on like big stages so far, where I know I'm not going to get like clipped by a mic or someone's going to knock it off a stand or anything like that. But I absolutely intend to gig this, next season more so. I'd imagine when I'm doing some bigger festival stages and stuff like that, I'll be taking it out when and where. Things that I really like about the bass are just the aesthetic. I think sometimes aesthetic is enough to give you a certain vibe or playing feel from this. For example, for me, it immediately makes me want to play with a pick, which not all basses do. I kind of split my time a lot of the time between fingerstyle and pick. I'm not massively leaning one way or the other, but with this, I really like to palm mute with a pick. The first gig that I actually played with it was I was covering for my good friend Johnny Dibble with his Foo Fighters tribute, and I put this on stage with super loud stage volume. I got to run my Ashdown RM500 almost at capacity through a 410, and it sounded absolutely phenomenal, and it was the best. And since then, I've just thought this was an absolute little rock and roll beauty. It's super vibey. It makes me really happy when I play it. It makes me feel really cool, to be honest, even though I'm not cool. And yeah, it's just a super fun bass. My favorite pickup settings are both on, but with the bridge tone rolled down to 50%. So I have the neck and bridge volumes on full, both selected, but then I keep the neck pickup wide open and I just roll the bridge back a little bit to take some of the kind of top end out slightly. And that to me sounds amazing. It sits in most mixers really well. And loads of people that I've played with or who have heard this bass have actually commented on how well it sits in a mix. Now, I've said before, vintage Gibsons for me are the sleeper basses in the market at the moment. Having a look on Reverb and eBay, you can kind of pick these up for anywhere between kind of £2,000 and £3,000 depending on condition. And if you look at a comparable 64 Jazz or P bass, for example, you're going to be looking at least double that. I'd expect you're kind of like on the way to triple that. So for me, Gibsons at the moment are the basses to be buying. You're still buying a golden era vintage bass, like a kind of like early mid 60s bass. And if you look at even the 60s guitars, and the S335 in good condition is going to cost you like £25,000, and you can get the bass equivalent for, £2,000, £2,500, £3,000, which is just criminally undervalued at the moment. One of the interesting things about the bass is because the bridge is quite far forward comparatively with, say, a Fender, for example, it actually makes the first position longer than you'd think. Although this is Gibson's equivalent of a short scale bass, because of that slightly longer position, it feels really natural to long scale players. You're going to have no problems kind of playing this bass. And yeah, it's an interesting feel for sure. It kind of, it makes it feel a lot longer scale than it is. Anyway, I don't want this video to be super long. I'm just showing off one of the basses that I bought recently that I really, really love, and I hope you guys found it interesting. If you're looking for a vintage bass, check out my friends at Vintage Bass Room. This is where I bought this bass, and they've always got some really cool basses in stock. So if you're interested in getting yourself a vintage instrument, I'd go check out their website. It's full of good stuff. As always, thank you so much for watching and hanging out today. I've been Matt Parker. If you've liked this video, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps me grow this YouTube channel, and I want to keep showing you guys super cool basses. And until next time, I'll see you soon.